Hi, I'm Jonathan, founder of ReWeaver AI. Our first product, ReWeaver, runs the code design loop in both directions, from codebase to Figma, redesigned back as a pull request. Today's demo is a tic-tac-toe app with accessibility issues buried deep in its game logic. We'll run the loop, find the drift between code and design using ReWeaver. Let's go. Okay, let's get started. Here I have a project that I uploaded to GitHub that I built with Claude, vibe coded it with a simple prompt to build a tic-tac-toe app using HTML and CSS. And Claude went ahead and not only built an app for me, but also looks like it put together a design system and some design tokens and even some themes. And I want to look a little more deeply at this project to see if it's production ready. And so I can do that by using ReWeaver. ReWeaver is an app that runs in your tray on a Mac, and we're getting ready to support Windows soon. And when I open ReWeaver, it automatically opens to the home page, which shows me an overview of the projects that I'm working on, gives me some pointers to different parts of the system, and reflects in this area here my production drift ratio score, which is a health score for all the projects that I'm working on in aggregate. PDR is between 0 and 1. A higher score is not good, and a lower score is closer to production ready. And it's comprised of a formula that calculates the effort it would take for you to get production readiness based on the drift that currently exists inside your code base. I have a node over here that lets me click on all the projects that I'm working on, either local on my machine or remote on GitHub. And I can add a new project, and I can see here's the project I was just pointing to. In my browser, I can add the project and it will start scanning it for me and also connect it to the whole ReWeaver system. Here I can see I'm not doing too well when it comes to PDR. I can see critical errors and warnings and info messages all related to production drift. I can go even deeper by looking at the code inside of VS or Cursor. So I click this Open In button here, and I can pick either VS Code or Cursor. It's an extension that's built and supported in both of these tools. I can also go to Figma, which I'll do in a second, but let's first go into VS Code. First prompts me for a local location to put the source code to clone it locally so that it can scan it locally, and I can work on the code and the design with ReWeaver at the side, helping me out as I go through dealing with drift. And so I'll open clone here, and it automatically navigates me to Visual Studio. It shows me the source code tree. It shows that it has themes defined, some JavaScript code, design tokens. So this is pretty rich for a simple app in terms of a design system. So this is a good example of something that'll allow me to look at both code and design at the same time, which is exactly what we want to show you today, the round trip between design and code. So one of the first things I'll do is I'll scan the entire project using ReWeaver for drift. And as I scan it, it calls into the ReWeaver system. It pulls back different categories of drift across multiple dimensions that we've defined. And in this instance, pulled back issues across 7 different categories. One of them, and one that's notable in AI code, as I found, is accessibility. There are several issues that come up with AI-generated code related to accessibility. And here we've broke it down into subcategories. Things like color contrast comes up quite a bit, being able to understand the difference between two visual elements on top of each other and the contrast ratio. This tells me things like score value field and status field is showing a contrast ratio that's not meeting the standards of accessibility. I can navigate to those issues. I can fix those issues. It creates a more contrasted color for me here. And I can just, in a single click, fix the issues as I see fit. I also have quick fix capabilities where I can see a problem as I hover over squiggly lines, and then I can quick fix the problem using ReWeaver, preview the fix, ignore the fix if I want to, and just continue on bringing that PDR number down. And so that helps the developer through addressing these issues that surface and getting them closer to production readiness. But there's also the other side of the designer who is designing the UI for this tic-tac-toe app. Let's take a look at that side. By going back into ReWeaver and going back to the project that we were on, I also have the ability to open the project in Figma. Now what this does is it activates a plugin that's currently in development, so we haven't put it on the marketplace yet. Still in testing, still in beta. And if I open that plugin, it will show me that it automatically connected to that project I was on, but it also shows me the other projects that were in ReWeaver. And so I can switch back and forth and look at the different design systems between these projects. I have a generate tab that lets me generate the design system. I can then scan what I have in Figma in comparison to what I have in code, along with scoring across those dimensions from a design perspective. So different from the code production drift, now we're talking about the design production drift. I also have a third tab called Create, where I can just start building components in Figma that ReWeaver is aware of and can then scaffold back into my code base. And I'll show an example of how that works. Let's start by generating. As I generate the system, it's now going and introspecting the code base and pulling back styles from the code base, pulling back color palettes, pulling back tokens, variables. You can see here, if I open up my variable screen, it's pulled back all the themes, all the colors, all the tokens, even radius and typography. And so now as I build inside of Figma, I can leverage the design system from my code base at the same time. That's a generation step. But what's more interesting is how do you synchronize those two things together? Thankfully with ReWeaver, because it's aware of this connection, you can see how it will respond and produce issues that go out of sync with each other. I'll show that in 1 second. So let's go down these pages that are generated. It has the overview page. It's really a high-level overview of the design system here. There are color palettes across all the different themes. The design system itself, which breaks it down a little bit further, shows border radius, shows components. And I can see here there are no components because that was that flat HTML file. And I can see in the component library page that there's nothing here. So I want to put a component in here. I do see it has patterns. Patterns are compositions of components. So here, one of the patterns is the app itself. These are all components inside of a larger container pattern. And I can build inside of here and I can leverage all of the variables and tokens that got pulled in from my code base. And everything I do inside of Figma will connect automatically with my code base. Let's go back to components. Going back to that tic-tac-toe app, there were X's and O's, and it turns out they were drawn through SVG. I want to have a little bit more control over those game pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and add a game piece here. I already pre-built it. It's two variants, an X and an O. This is the game piece itself. And by adding it to the component library page, automatically ReWeaver tells me that there's been updates to the design system. And so I rescan to check whatever I did in Figma matches whatever I have in code. And I can see here, one thing that happened is it brought the game piece. Before there were no components. Now the game piece is a component that ReWeaver knows about. And if I expand it, I can scroll down to here and I can see a structural message that relates to Figma having a game piece, but the code not having a matching entry. So right now there's drift between code and design. In design, there's a component for the game piece. In code, that component doesn't exist yet. And so with one gesture, I can connect those two pieces back together or reweave them back together through GitHub. Here, what it did was it told me that a PR was created for that component. And so I can click on this button and it will take me into GitHub. And in GitHub, it shows me the scaffolding of that component. So it wrote all the code necessary to get the component to show up inside. Here, it's the HTML. It shows that it's picking a specific variant of the component. Going back, I can see it probably brings in the styles and the CSS, everything that I need to bring this component in. So now I have a pull request, and I have a design system that shows the component, and I have a Figma file that designs the component, and I have GitHub that implements the component. I want to bring this code, that pull request that I created, into my code base. And I can do that through merging the pull request. Pretty straightforward to just merge that component scaffolding into my code base. Of course, we could have conversations between design and engineering inside of GitHub or Slack or whatever. And once the decision has been made that the component is ready, we bring it into the code base. And now when I look inside of VS, there it is, I can see that the code, my local code, is out of sync with my main branch. I can click this button down here and it will bring it back in sync. And by looking here, I can see that it added the component for me. It gave me HTML for the component. It gave me CSS for the component. That brought the code from design back in. And if I was to change code in here, if I was to change the color, the style, whatever, it would then sync back to Figma. So I went from code first to design, added something to design, and then went back to code. I actually already wrote some code that I can pull down here. And so let me just copy a little GitHub trick. I created a branch called after, where the code has already been written for me to bring that game piece that I created, which is just a simple X and O replacement. And you can see that now I'm using the components that I had built. There's still some layout issues I need to deal with, but now I have a component in Figma that I can fully control and is fully bound to code. So if I wanted to change the color of the X to something else, let's say green, I could pop over to Figma and I could change the color here to something else. Say green. It will tell me things are out of sync. I can rescan it. It'll give me a message saying the color is out of sync with code base. I can fix the code base, and I go back and forth syncing the two together. And that in a nutshell is the round trip between design and code and design in both directions, all synchronized with a little help from GitHub between my code base and my design system in Figma. Hope you enjoyed the demo. Stay tuned for the next one.